Jujutsu Kaisen Part 2 of 262 is officially here in its full high quality and translated goodness form, and I'm gonna be honest with you, a bit scared of the implications that are made in this chapter. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Sometimes you gotta close the door to open a window.
Also, before we get into the video, I just want to ask, if you've not already, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel, like and subscribe. Some of you guys watch my stuff all the time, regularly actually, and aren't even subscribed. I've had quite a few comments like that recently, so go ahead, check that subscribe button. Make sure it's on, you know? Anyways, the chapter opens up with Rika holding onto Yuta's body and crying over the events of that body no longer being alive, no longer being with us. And with it, this chapter kind of clarifies a fair amount of things here, but the next page here gives us more of YUTA vs Sukuna with a very interesting caption: Infinity versus Amplification. The battle will be decided in these 3 minutes. Now, this is a very interesting thing to say, and it sort of leans into the whole theory of everything being a loop within JJK. It's a theory I've talked about before on the channel, but it does imply that this fight will be decided within the next 3 minutes. Obviously, that's pretty duh. But the last time we had a countdown like this was actually between Gojo and Sukuna, the countdown to Gojo's Hollow Purple, which is kind of funny. Again, time loop it right now. We are in a fucking cycle. Do I think Sukuna will die here? Absolutely not, but I will get into that towards the end of the video here. Anyways, we see Yuta tossing Sukuna around a little bit more inside of the domain here, and we're treated to an inner monologue from Yuta, because Yuta goes on to say, Rika isn't haunting this body anymore. Now, that is something that is very, very interesting, because it almost indirectly confirms that Yuta is indeed a cursed spirit, because there's been debates now for a little minute whether she was a cursed spirit or a Shikigami, with evidence kind of supporting both. But Yuta saying this kind of confirms that she is indeed a cursed spirit. Now, before I get any comments saying, yo, we already knew this, I'm well aware Rika was a cursed spirit in JJK 0. However, after the events of JJK 0, when we next see her, when she's next introduced in the Culling Games, Rika wasn't introduced as a cursed spirit. It just said that she left and the will of Rika Romoto remained, and that's about it. It's never confirmed whether she's a cursed spirit or a Shikigami, the same way she was in JJK 0, which left it open to the debate here. But even Ryu doesn't even identify her as a cursed spirit or Shikigami. He just says that big thing, and someone of his level should definitely be able to identify the differences between the two here. But this chapter almost certainly implies that Rika is a cursed spirit. As we know, cursed spirits are known for haunting people in the series. It's happened quite a few times. But on top of this, there is a slight confirmation that Yuta also confirms something else in tandem with Rika not haunting his body, meaning he can only use Limitless now, meaning that Yuta can't use Limitless and Kenjaku's technique simultaneously. And this statement in and of itself sort of implies and confirms the Kenjaku Curse technique is activated intermittently, but since Yuta is using Gojo's CT, it means he can't use Kenjaku's to keep the body swap thing, which kind of means that this whole thing is now officially on a time limit, kind of. But this means that it's not a permanent change here, and Yuta went into this fight, as suggests here, knowing that this is kind of a one-way street. This is, we will circle back to this a little bit later on here, because again, the implications of this chapter for my boy, pretty scary. But I can already smell the ass pummel comments, people typing, weeb, yo, Kenjaku used multiple techniques in other people's bodies, why can't Yuta And listen, I get it, Let me, it's a bit confusing, it is a little bit confusing, so let me fucking run it down. Yuta's curse technique is copy and not the body swap, whereas Kenjaku's was actually the body swap. What does this mean? Well, it means Kenjaku used his own curse technique and wasn't constrained to 1, a time limit, and 2, conditions like Yuta is right now, which is the time limit being the conditions. You see, Yuta is copying the body swap technique, which needs to be seemingly activated intermittently, meaning right now he's not using that technique because he's already used it, and now he's used Kenjaku's technique, he's free to use Gojo's technique, which is kind of a side effect of using Kenjaku's technique, which adds more credibility to the fact that Yuta deep down sort of knew that this was more than likely a one-way street to the Reaper's door. So I hope that kind of clears things up here. Sukuna does actually end up talking about this a little bit later on the chapter, and we'll address that. But we do get some more dialogue from Yuta about Sukuna's will and how right now he can't use it with only his 2 left arms, and that aside from amplification, he shouldn't have any more tricks up his sleeve to catch Yuta off guard, declaring himself to have the advantage. And then accidentally slapping Sukuna because he misjudged the distance, which I've got to be honest is genuinely just the funniest shit in this chapter. It's the fact that Gege thought of this was genius in itself. Like, I imagine this whole scenario of Yuta going to punch, realizing the punch isn't going to hit, and then extending that range just to slap him instead. And Sukuna just, his face is kind of like, did this bitch just slap me? What the fuck? Yeah, that shit did make me, it made me chuckle a little bit here. But like I mentioned in the leak video, this whole scenario here reminds me of that one fight from Fullmetal Alchemist between Ed and Pride, who Pride thought he was sure to have the advantage here with a small size, but because Ed was a short king just like me, you know, he was able to adjust pretty fucking easily. But moving on a little bit deeper here, we see Yuta talking about how absurdly long Gojo's limbs are, and I can already hear the fan artists going crazy with that one. I can just feel it as we speak. Someone's pencil is creating flames from paper and lead right now. I can just feel it. Anyway, he goes on to say that from the outside, the Limitless seems flawless and all-powerful technique, but it's way more sensitive than he thought. A single round of switch chaining is just simply nowhere near enough to master it, and I understand why you need the 6 size, which I heavily fuck with for both Gojo's character and Yuta's character. There is this impression of Gojo's character that he's just blessed with this insane power since birth, but this chapter makes it very, very clear that that's not the case here, that he's had to work through this. I mean, this dude literally died at one point trying to perfect his technique, which is kind of insane. Like, I liked how Gege is hammering home that there is no freebies in Jujutsu Kaisen in terms of power, and on top of this chapter, it kind of answers that question of, are you the strongest because you are Gojo, or are you Gojo because you're the strongest? And we finally get that answer. I find it kind of poetic that it was Yuta that was able to answer that question for us. He was, in fact, the strongest because he's Gojo. As Yuta is finding out right now, Gojo didn't just stumble into this power. It took years to hone it and craft it into the power that we have now all come to know. And Yuta even thinks about Gojo laughing and saying, it'll be fine, I'm the strongest after all. And he just wonders, what did it take for him to say that so fucking confidently? Something I really love about Yuta taking over Gojo's body here is not only are we getting character development for Yuta, my goat, but we're also getting more and more and depth and development for Gojo simultaneously. The way Gege utilizes flashbacks within this series is genuinely one of my favorite aspects of the series as a whole. It typically always leaves you and me, the readers, in a position of, I want more of this, why the fuck didn't he explain this, only for him to later on go into it and be like, yo, remember the thing from way back when? Yeah, this makes sense now. But moving on, Sukuna, however, catches Yuta's slip and he says, you ain't got time to be daydreaming here, son, wake the fuck up. Which is where we're treated some internal monologue from Sukuna himself and him piecing sort of everything together. Sukuna kind of acted like us, the reader here, lots of questions and sort of piecing it all together. It turns out Kenjaku had actually informed him about Yuta's chaos technique and what it does, which, as Sukuna figured out, requires feeding the target's body or part of that body to the Banshee, which is in reference to Rika, which, again, another reference of her being an actual chaos spirit, which is kind of nice. But Sukuna questions a few things here. Did Rika come with this body? Can he even use other copied abilities while using Gojo's body? And even if he can, Sukuna already has a good understanding of what he's got in that arsenal right now. And right now, Yuta using Limitless is basically a side effect of Kenjaku's chaos technique. And Sukuna comes to a very startling realization that Yuta kind of has no other cards right now besides Limitless, but then questions how long can the technique be copied, how long can it be active, and will he be able to keep that form once Kenjaku's technique ends, finally arriving at the alarming thought of the possibility that Yuta came into this fight prepared to die, and he might have assumed that there would be no coming back, leading to a flashback of Sukuna remembering Gojo's purple unlimited explosion that he fucking nuked the entirety of Shinjuku with, which I thought was incredibly wild, because as we know now, the plan for Yuta to take over Gojo's body, should anything happen to Gojo, Yuta watched Gojo use that explosion, and Yuta was shown apologizing to Kusakabe. Everything Gojo did within that fight was, as he said, to show off to his students, one in particular, and that being Yuta, because obviously this conversation had already happened before he'd fought Sukuna, which I think is insane. Gojo was essentially showing Yuta just what is possible and what can be done with this technique and what can be achieved. So from here on, we get another little flashback of Gojo telling Yuta his cursed energy is all over the place. And once again, getting on his ass about his cursed energy control, which is something that even Yuji noticed, that he's constantly surging with energy. It's hard to read his attacks, and I think that's kind of the option that Yuta laid into here, which I think something it's personally we'll come back to a little bit later on here, but I think this kind of thing now is going to come back to bite Yuta in the ass. It's been mentioned twice now from Gojo to Yuta about his sloppy cursed energy. This one that he mentioned in this chapter was seemingly in the past because Maki has no scars and her old hurt, and then obviously the most recent one was when they had the discussion about him taking over his body. But one of my biggest concerns of Yuta taking over Gojo's body was the memories and how they were slightly inconsistent, and I made this video. It's pretty outdated now because this chapter kind of clears it up, but feel free to go check it out here. But Yuta mentions how he's being thorough, going through Gojo's memories one by one, which explains why he didn't arrive at the memory of Gojo knowing about Sukuna's domain amp inside of domain expansion yet, but he did know how to counter Sukuna's domain with the condensed domain, because I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm personally kind of satisfied with this answer. You guys know me, I am almost the #1 GOJO glazer 9 times out of 10, but when something in the story bugs me, I do gotta talk about it. I gotta let it be known, because I don't want to see GOJO fumble the story, so I have to talk about things that bug me. But generally, there's very few things that do bug me. There's a few issues in the story with souls that typically kind of like, that's why I'm so fascinated with it, because eventually I do think GOJO will come along and explain it, I hope, eventually. Anyways, we see Yuta starting to chant up a hollow purple, and Sukuna just says, nah, son, we are not doing that. And yeah, he's breaking the hand signs on that bad boy, and as I mentioned in the leaks video, this was very reminiscent of him doing the same thing to Megami's Maharaga's hand signs here, which I thought was quite interesting. But Sukuna punches Yuta away and thinking to himself, does this dude not understand Gojo had to fire this attack the long way around because I wouldn't give him a chance to do so? Which is where we see Yuta sat up on skulls saying Sukuna is definitely still weary of him using other techniques other than Limitless, but he should know I can't use 2 at once, and that's why even using this technique inside the void is a simple plan that will work. Which is where GOJO treats us to the full double spread, 2 full double spreads to be exact, of Yuta using blue to pull in a voice recorder that has none other than Inumaki's voice on that, and he just hits him with the English or Spanish. Well, he actually says don't move, but the meme's quite funny of the English or Spanish. I think that's quite funny, to be honest with you. I can't wait for someone to animate that, because it's going to happen eventually. But Sukuna recognizes this isn't a copy technique, this is the real deal, and we are showing Inumaki coughing up a lot of blood. This dude is spewing blood out right now as Yuta charges up a fully chanted hollow purple and is ready to fire that bad boy point blank at Sukuna. Something Sukuna has stated himself before would be fatal if that happened to him. Now, the real question is, will this work? Probably not. I'm going to be honest with you, probably not. The emphasis on Yuta dying and the technique expiring in this chapter are very, very heavy, alongside multiple hints of Yuta's cursed energy control being pretty rough and sloppy. Makes me think that this will end in failure, and if it's not failure, it will result in Sukuna going maybe rage mode and fully transforming into the Major, or progressing his own transformation more. Honestly, I don't know, because as I mentioned before, GOJO has drawn Sukuna's form differently in different artworks multiple different times, but currently right now I believe that is for a reason, because as it stands right now, Sukuna has a current white mask. When he was shown in the double spread the colors of his mask when he was being stabbed by Maki, it was white, it was different. But recently, when Yuta took over Gojo, GOJO gave him with this mask, a mask that looked as if it had been damaged and healed. So it does make me very, very fucking concerned about this whole thing. Also, I saw a lot of folks talking about how the recorder got into the domain being a plot hole. There's a lot of people out there waiting to just drop the whole "this is bullshit, this is an ass pull" comment instantly on a week-by-week chapter. I think typically I would like to reserve the whole ass pull plot hole type shit until the story is definitely completed, because doing stuff like that on a week-by-week chapter when the story's still evolving is just not good. I mean, obviously you can express unhappiness with something, but dropping the instant plot hole ass pull comment on a weekly series is very strange to me personally. I always say, let the dudes, whoever it is that you're calling out on, just let them cook, because they could just easily explain this in 2, 3, 4 chapters down the line here. But allow me to provide some possible explanations and extremely plausible explanations for how this recorder got into here. One, Yuta already had it on him when he entered the domain and planted it somewhere during a scuffle. Very plausible. It's happened. Yuta's very sneaky in his fights. We know this. Two, Todo threw it in from the outside. Remember, Todo was privy to Yuta's plans about Kenjaku, and no one knew about Todo's existence, so it's potential that Todo was holding onto that voice recorder and was like, yeet in there, because it's not a cursed object. It doesn't have cursed energy. It could go in there, which brings me to point 3. The tape recorder is an object, so it should just be able to pass through the barrier, through the domain, fairly easy. And for those of you saying, well, it should have been torn to shreds because of the short hits, what short hits? There is nothing going on right now. The short hits are cancelling each other out right now. As for how Inumaki managed this, it could be due to time skip training, I imagine. Maybe he can imbue his voice into objects now and set it off as a cursed energy delay. I mean, even if it was imbued with cursed energy from Inumaki's CT, the CT probably wouldn't be detectable until it's activated. I don't fucking know. There's probably a whole lot of ways. I mean, we saw Todo advance his cursed technique way, way beyond than what we thought. Who's to say Inumaki hasn't done the same thing? Regardless, there are a myriad of ways to explain this, but I'm sure we'll absolutely get a very valid explanation in the next chapter here, but it is interesting to think about. Anyways, that is everything from me. I appreciate you all watching this video. This chapter, it's given me a lot of information to go off here, and it's nice to be back and getting that JJK here. Once again, apologies for no leak stream. The daddy duties are going crazy at the moment, but once that settles down, we should be able to get back to some normality, well, at least until Baby Weeb arrives, and then it's just absolute chaos. The kitchen's on fire. The house is on fire. It's not, by the way. It's not. Any oldies watch it, it's not. Anyways, that's everything from me. Much fucking love, big fucking kisses. Make sure to go drink some water, go tell somebody you fucking love them, and as always, I will catch you guys all in the fucking next one. Peace.